She was totally depressed, and for good reason. They told her that her immune system was eating itself. She had a disorder, and she had a diagnosis, and she was only gonna live for 6 weeks. And I'm thinking, 6 weeks, what can I do?
In this eye-opening episode, Dr. Patrick Porter, a leader in the field of brain entrainment, explores the benefits of using light therapy and binaural beats to improve mood, memory, and sleep, and discusses brainwaves and what the brain of a depressed person looks like. This episode isn't to be missed. In Season 1 of Becoming Unstoppable, I packed up my life and went on a 90-day mission to biohack my way back to health. I used the latest wearable tech to alleviate stress, took lab tests to get to the root of my rut, tested nootropics to boost brain function, and more. In Season 2, we delve even deeper into the world of biohacking for peak performance. Before we dive in, be sure to subscribe, grab a copy of my best-selling book Unstoppable, and stay tuned for the anticipated release of the Unstoppable Daily Biohacking Journal, which is the first of its kind to help measure your progress, uncover hidden triggers that dull your focus, and provide proven biohacking strategies to increase your productivity. Understanding how your brain works is the key to unlocking your potential. One area of interest are brainwaves. Brainwaves are created by synchronized electrical pulses from neurons communicating with one another and can be measured through an EEG device. Light and sound can change our brainwaves to produce a different psychological state. One way to achieve this is through binaural beats. Binaural beats activate specific systems within the brain. One study demonstrated brainwave entrainment was shown to produce an average IQ increase of 23%. And in today's video, Dr. Patrick Porter, the founder and inventor of Braintap, a wearable device that uses both light and sound for brain entrainment, discusses the different types of brainwaves, the frequency follow response, the frequencies of cities and mountains, and how our body and brain responds to them.
When we measure brainwaves of somebody who is depressed, what we typically find is a really high delta, very small amount of theta and alpha, and high degree of beta, and maybe even bordering on gamma, which gamma can be good or bad. It could do that. And the reason that's bad is we only experience fear, frustration, and anxiety in heightened amounts when we're in our vigilant mind, and our vigilant mind is turned on by beta. So if we're at the ready, we're going to be in beta. Now, the zone happens between that state of beta and that state of alpha. It's called SMR, sensory motor rhythm brainwaves. When you're in that, like a professional basketball player that's doing high-level physics, they don't even know they're doing it. They're running down the court, passing the ball behind their back, and doing all sorts of crazy things because their brain's doing all that for them. All that's happening because they're in a zone where the brain can do it. If they were too much in beta, they'd be knocking the ball off their feet. They wouldn't be able to do it. If they were too much in alpha, they wouldn't care. They wouldn't get off the bench. What happens with the depressed person is that cognitive part, that reasoning part, we call the alpha intuition. So if you start to use your intuition to precipitate fears, frustrations, and anxieties because that's your habit, or maybe that's a habit you learned from mom and dad, or turned on genes. They say we turn on our genes from 7 generations. So when somebody says we have depression in our family, that could be true, but it's a gene expression. It's not a gene reality. So you can change those gene expressions by changing your physiology, your psychology. Better if you do both at the same time. What we find is that we got to get people out of high beta, high vigilance mode, because if you're at the ready all the time, and think of it like you have a reservoir full of water and you want to put more water in it. There's no place for it to go. That's the nervous system. So there's no place for it to go, so it's going to back up. And if it backs up, it's going to get floods, and we're going to have emergencies. And that's what's going on with the depressed person. A balanced brain should have about 40% of its occupation of activities while you're awake in beta, 30% in alpha. And then the rest kind of goes like a mountain. And the reason for that is your intuition, which carries joy, expressions of gratitude, all these positive emotions, it balances out this vigilant mind. And then we start predicting a future that's pleasant and positive. Now, if you have too much alpha, you're going to have attention deficit disorder, because now you're being too hairy-fairy and too pie in the sky and things like that. So it's a balancing act. And that we always say no one brainwave is more important than any other, but a symphony of brainwaves is what we need. There's a science called frequency following response, and we all adhere. It's like a law, really. So let's say that you and I go to the beach, and we're sitting on the beach, and we start to hear the waves, we get relaxed. those waves are actually resonating a frequency of 10 hertz frequency. The environment is. So our bodies act like a biofeedback mechanism all the time. We're following that response. If we take that same thing and we go into the middle of New York City, let's say, you can feel it. It's palatable, the stress, the anxiety, because that's a beta experience. Most cities operate between 18 and 22 hertz frequency. You can measure these things. If we went to the mountaintop, the mountains resonate at 7.8 hertz frequency. That's the Schumann frequency, which they call as the frequency of the planet. Everything is bound by these frequency bands, if you will, within the sun, the nighttime. There's different rhythms and cadence to life, and that's how our body responds to it. Of course, we're trying to move people away from stress, what we call the primitive mind or the survival brain, into the rest, recovery, healing brain, if you will. During the day, we're going to go back and forth there, of course, but now, unfortunately, our lives are filled with a lot of stressors. Back before all this technology, if somebody had the stress, let's say a heightened stress response 3 times a week, that was a big deal. Most people get that before breakfast now, because the first thing they do is pick up their phone and they get a trigger. We're going to work to disassociate those triggers through the science of frequency following response. The body responds to these light, sound, and vibration. The world that we live in, we only truly see about 20%. That's what science says. We render the rest. We're rendering it based on our beliefs, based on our expectations. And so if we can start to train our brain to render a better reality because we're doing it from the inside out, then things are going to change. Back before we even had technology to measure this, people used to say the masses were asleep. So we always think of delta really as a sleeping state. But we have delta going all the time because we have unconscious processes going on in our body. But it should be less than 5% of our brainwave activity. So think of brainwaves like television stations or radio stations. Those brainwaves carry information to the rest of our body that tell our body what to do. And if any of those are out of balance, it's going to cause imbalances in the rest of the system. A high delta usually signifies either brain trauma, and the brain's trying to heal itself, or inflammation, or a combination of both, or just being tired. With the Braintap, we have 3 lights. So first I'll talk about the eye lights, what's going on there. For years, even back in the 80s when HemiSync came out, they started doing things with binaural beats. So that was sound. So we thought, wow, now with the computer chip, we can match it with digital technology called LED, light emitting diodes. It's not really light even. So it's emitting this light, but at a very definite pulse. Our eyes are attached to our brain, and they are our brain. So we're going to turn on the visual cortex, and it keeps the frontal lobe going and turns on the brain. The brain has to process 100% of light. It only has to turn on about 15% for sound. So we're balancing the brain through different neural channels, but they're synchronized. So different areas of the brain have to be activated. And depending upon what rhythm or cadence we put it at, the brain's going to follow that. If we want to take somebody from, let's say, 12 hertz frequency, because we're doing some SMR training, down to 7 and then back up to 14, and we're going to keep changing it. Neuroplasticity happens because of change, not because of doing the same algorithm. Just like going to the gym and having one weight room, we need to have different ones. There's 2 different frequencies that we use in the ears. One is binaural beats. Binaural beats is a stereo process. So in order for them to work, you need to wear stereo headphones. And what happens is, we know that if I send a 200 hertz frequency in this ear and a 210 hertz frequency in this ear, the brain's not going to hear 200, it's not going to hear 210, it's going to hear 10 hertz frequency. So our brain's always mixing and matching that. What happens at the cortical level of our brain, we can measure it, that this frequency response happens. The brain says 10 hertz frequency. Our brain loves patterns. So it's listening for the pattern. And then when we change the pattern, it goes, hey, wait a minute, what's going on there? If we give them the same pattern for a certain period of time, we found the brain just says, oh, that's nothing, we can cancel it out. So we've got to entertain the brain at the same time we're training the brain. We had a woman come in, she was in really bad shape. You would swear she was going to a funeral. She was all black, she was all depressed. They told her that her immune system was eating itself. She had a disorder and she had a diagnosis and she was only gonna live for 6 weeks. And I'm thinking, 6 weeks, what can I do? I started thinking a little bit and I said, you know what? You're gonna do a session. I'm gonna see you over the next 8 weeks. She says, well, they told me I only have 6 weeks to live. I said, no, we're going to set up a program. It's gonna take 8 weeks. And during that time, we're gonna change the way you're thinking. And she goes, what do you mean? I said, well, the reality is that your body that you're sitting here with is no more than 2 years old. Most of your body is going to change in the next 6 to 8 weeks. 70% of it's going to be different. So let's create a different one. Let's start drinking more water, half your body's weight in ounces of water. Let's start eating 70-80% of your diet in raw, fresh foods. Let's get you on some good supplementation. We would do all those things. And by the way, you're going to do this every day at home, and you're going to come into the clinic twice a week. We're going to work with you. About the 4th week, she comes in, and I said, well, what's happening? She goes, you won't believe it. I went to the doctor, and he told me they misdiagnosed me. My immune system isn't destroying my body anymore. Then when you do a little research about the psychosomatic reason for that is fear. You can shut down your immune system very easily. Now, it could have been any number of those things depending upon your view of life, but I think it's all of those things. You got to clear out the traumas, the toxins, and the thoughts. Once you do that, you can get incredible changes.